Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards, where no ship is safe from being taken down to its nuts and bolts. I would just like to take a quiet moment here at the beginning of this episode and note in front of all the gods in the human pantheon and all the countries on your tiny little blue globe that I was f***ing right! Yes, in fact, the mouse is changing the name of Slave 1 to Fire Spray, and we have already talked about how that is f***ing stupid previously, so I will not reiterate those details. But I just want to point out for all of those people who told me that I was buying into yellow journalism, this, that, and the other, that I was f***ing right. Yes, changing the name is exactly the kind of stupid-ass humie bullshit that megacorporations would do to continue sucking up to a gigantic totalitarian nation that is still using slavery and concentration camps to this very day. Yes, it is exactly predictable. Yes, we all saw it coming, or at least most of us apparently. And yes, it happened. And it's still f***ing stupid. Anyways, on with the show. One of the more interesting things about your particular species is that the concept of unrestricted warfare is fairly new in your timeline. Up until about the turn of the last century, as in 1900 or so by your accounting, wars were fought by gentlemen, for lack of a better word. There were rules, there were concepts, there were precepts, there were restrictions, there were guidelines, there were all of these different things binding war to this thing that happened over the hill from the civilized population, because the civilized population rightly did not want any of that shit. And then some stuff happened, and in the span of just over 100 years or so, y'all got really, really good at killing each other in creative ways, so congratulations on that. And one notable example of this development over the years is the concept of cruiser rules, and how World War I basically fucked those. You see, before World War I, merchants during times of combat were considered kind of sacrosanct. If you were to attack them, they typically had to be flying the flag of one of the combatants involved in the actual war. And if you were going to attack them, you still had to give them warning. You had to actually, let them know that, hey, guys, stop. No, really stop. And if they repeatedly refused your request to stop and pull over on the ocean, then you are allowed to maybe start shooting at them, but only then. And if they were not flying a flag of one of the combatants, the only thing you were allowed to do was inspect them for contraband, for military hardware that they were transporting to one of the other combatants. And you could only take that off the ship, and if it was flying a neutral flag, you had to let the ship go. And if it wasn't flying a neutral flag, if it was one of the combatant ships, you actually had to make provisions for the crew to get to safety. You and your ship, personally, had to carry that crew to safety if you were planning on destroying it or capturing it. Amusingly, this whole gentleman's agreement concept only got codified right before it stopped fucking mattering. Why did it stop mattering, you ask? Because of submarines. You see, the initial concept was that submarines would have to play by the same rules, and if they wanted to torpedo a merchant, they had to make provisions for getting the merchant's crew to safety. And initially they did attempt to do that, and it turned out to put subs at significant risk because World War I submarines were not at all safe on the surface of the ocean. And if they were, say, towing lifeboats to the nearest land, which they were supposed to do under the cruiser rules, that made them a massive floating target. Bad news bears right there. So that's one side of the argument of why cruiser rules went away. The other side of the argument is the more interesting aspect, and is kind of the tie-in for what we're going to be talking about this week. But first, the interesting thing. They're called Qships. Now, in fairness, your Not Quite World War I was not the first time that this concept had actually been used, but it is the first time that it became prevalent. And no, by Qship, I am not talking about a ship designed by that James Bond awesome individual. I am talking about something else entirely. Although the concept was pretty straightforward. One side of your World War I got really, really tired of their shipping traffic being sunk by submarines. And at the time, submarines typically surfaced to engage surface vessels. Torpedoes were not very good at the time. They were not guided at all. They were not very reliable, and they were very, very expensive and hard to come by. And at the time, submarines had deck guns. They actually had guns mounted to the top deck of the submarine. So the sub would surface and start opening fire on the shipping traffic they wanted to destroy. Well, people got cranky about that, understandably. And at the time, convoys did not actually work out so well. What's funny is they ended up working really well in your second not-quite World War, but in the first one, not so much. So some enterprising individual had a brilliant/crazy idea, it's funny how often those two words coincide, to take an existing merchant hull, build some collapsible boxes on the decks, and put guns inside of them. Deck guns, bolted to the deck of the merchant ship. They basically made a disguised, not at all warship that could shoot back at the submarine when the submarine surfaced to engage the merchant. So the basic premise is this thing would go off on its own, presenting a nice juicy target. A submarine would pop up out of the ocean and act like it was going to engage the merchant. The merchant would actually go through the motions of like people loading into lifeboats and this, that, and the other. And once they were pretty sure that they had suckered the submarine in, they'd drop the boxes and start blazing away at the submarine. Well, on the flip side, submarines got kind of cranky about this too, and pointed out how it kind of violated the notion of cruiser rules. Specifically, the merchants were not supposed to be armed, they were just supposed to be merchants. So then things all kind of fell apart, and then we suddenly had unrestricted submarine warfare, which was all kinds of exciting for everyone, and basically led to your Germany country losing the First World War on account of shooting the wrong freighters and getting another country involved, and that was a colossal mistake. But anyways, for those of us who are much more accustomed to unrestricted warfare, Qships are kind of a neat idea. Being that sneaky about, hey, look at me, I'm just a stupid little merchantman and now I'm gonna blow your fucking face off. I mean, that's got style to it, you gotta admit. Now, unfortunately, style or not, they didn't actually end up working so well. Qships were engaged in approximately 150 engagements with submarines. They were able to sink 14 of those submarines and damage another 60 at the cost of 27 Qships lost out of a fleet of 200. So not exactly the best ratio, but still a cool idea of just being basically like a first-generation stealth ship, where radar and such like did not really exist at the time, so you were just hiding yourself from visual inspection, which is the entire concept of stealth, right? And as with all cool ideas that have some degree of style involved in them, the Star Wars writers had to go and fuck it all up. You see, much as though the Dune universe had the Shipping Guild, the Star Wars universe has the Trade Federation. And no, they don't have anywhere near the same levels of power, but the Trade Federation does control a significant chunk of the actual, interplanetary trade in the Star Wars universe. And it started out pretty straightforward as just a trading federation, and as with all such things, their primary ship was a massive freighter. Like, fucking huge. We're talking over 3,000 meters in diameter here and over a kilometer tall. This thing's big. And it's set up pretty intelligently as a freighter. It has two massive docking ports / clamps on the front side of it that allows it to transship materials pretty quickly. It has all these hangar bays and hatches and whatnot lining the inside of its ring. And at the core is the command and control section, and I assume the passenger area as well, because the whole center ball section can drop right off of the ship and land by itself, while the ring section is being unloaded and reloaded and maintained and repaired and whatever else you're going to do with it. And best of all, it's got a pretty decent name for what it does. It's called the Lucrehulk. And for those of you with a limited vocabulary, lucre is treasure that you came by using questionable means. And of course, hulks are very large vehicles, and this thing is fucking huge, so it all fits together pretty well. And then, of course, the wheels somehow managed to come off the train. The Trade Federation over the years decided that they wanted to get into the weapons business, and typically the freighters carrying weapons should be, armed in case they get jumped. And then the Trade Federation wanted to get into even larger strong-arm tactics, like, holding an entire planet hostage over contract negotiations, so they really, really, really needed a warship then. And instead of doing the intelligent thing of going, hey, we've got this massive freighter, why don't we get sneaky with it and make it into a Qship and hide guns on it, and then the bad guys, or not even the bad guys, our enemies, will never know whether they're dealing with an actual freighter or a super overgunned warship. But no, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to take the freighters and try and kit bash them into actual battleships. Understandably, their first attempt was a miserable fucking failure. It certainly had more than enough guns, but the problem is they mounted them wrong, they couldn't point inwards, and they had limited range of fire. So basically, if you got directly over or underneath one of them, it was pretty much fucked. Now, of course, this is Star Wars, so capital ships don't normally get over or underneath each other, so this is kind of beside the point. Now, thankfully, they did get around to refitting them, and they ended up carrying basically about 48 turbo lasers, 472 laser cannons, and 164 point defense quad laser batteries. That's Pretty fucking heavy firepower right there. Damn. Oh, and that was just on the ring section. The core ball also carried another 21 quad laser point defense batteries, 48 assault lasers, and another 3 turbo lasers just for the shits and giggles of it, because why not? And of course the ball is where this all falls apart again, because apparently they decided to keep the design feature of being allowed to drop the ball separate from the ring and then it can land on its own, which is fine, it's a little armed by itself, but apparently it has no fucking shields, and it doesn't take a whole lot to just shoot it out of the sky, and without that the ring is kind of, useless. And speaking of design features being carried over that probably should not have been, they left all of the hatches and docking ports and hangar bays and other openings in the ring from its old freighter days. Again, that made sense for transshipping, and it was kind of useful because when the battle mode Lucrehulk wanted to drop all of its Vulture droids, it could just drop them all with a vengeance. But they didn't even install, doors or hatches on these openings, to the point where some weirdo little kid with too many MIDI what the fucks in his blood can literally accidentally fly a starfighter into the Lucrehulk's hangar, accidentally fire proton torpedoes that somehow manage to hit the fusion reactors that power this goddamn thing, and then accidentally destroy an entire Lucrehulk with a single starfighter, a single one, a ship that would have absolutely no chance of actually penetrating the Lucrehulk's shields with its weapons, but somehow you left all the fucking doors open, guys. And even beyond catastrophically failing and not closing any of the doors and thereby letting all of the equines out, why in the unholy fuck is the fusion reactor accessible and like a straight line of shot from one of the hangars on the Lucrehulk? What the hell sense does that make? Have y'all never heard of compartmentalization? You might want to look into that for your future designs, guys. So yeah, apparently the Lucrehulks are pretty decent freighters, just simply because of their cargo capacity. And frankly, they got to be pretty terrifying warships because they just kept bolting more and more guns to them. But man, the oversights. You can't just bolt guns onto something and call it a battleship and leave all of the hatches open and just hope it'll work. And damn, son, y'all could have made something really interesting out of this thing, and instead you just went with the direct in-your-face lazy-ass method. So congratulations on your complete and total lack of style. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.